From CNN Center in Atlanta, coverage of Election 2000 continues. Here again, Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, Jeff Greenfield, and Bill Schneider.
It is 6 o'clock on the East Coast. The polls have closed in 2 states, Indiana and Kentucky, and CNN is able to make its first call of the night. In Indiana, George W. Bush, the winner in a state that has only voted Democratic for president once in 60 years. In the state of Kentucky, something of a bellwether state, voted for the winning presidential candidate every year since 1964. Another win for George W. Bush. Looking at the electoral map, it is still very early, but putting these 2 states together, 20 electoral votes tallied up under the name of Texas Governor George W.
From CNN Center in Atlanta, coverage of Election 2000 continues. Here again, Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, Jeff Greenfield, and Bill Schneider.
At 7 o'clock, the polls have closed in certain states, and CNN is looking at what is going on in Florida. This race between Gore and Bush, too close to call, Jeff.
This is the one we'll be watching all night. Gore made 19 visits to the state, Bush 13. They poured in millions of dollars. 4th biggest prize, and it's up for grabs.
Mike McCurry says what's going on tonight is a ground war, a massive one, and look at this. Look at the war in Georgia. Vice President Gore, Governor Bush, this race for CNN at this hour, too close to call.
And this has got to be a shocker in Austin. They had this race put away in their pocket for weeks, if not months. We'll see.
Let's go to Thomas Jefferson State. What's happening in Virginia? Again, the race, too close to call.
Bernie, Virginia has not voted for a Democrat for president since Lyndon Johnson in 1964. It is the heart of the Republican base in the South. They should have won this one going away.
In New Hampshire, Governor Bush lost the primary there, but right now it's neck and neck between his opponent and himself. Looking at South Carolina with its 8 electoral votes, Governor Bush has won another southern state tonight. And in Vermont, Vice President Gore wins Vermont's 3 electoral votes. Now, for your viewers watching our coverage, this is the electoral map. Every time we call states, we will tell you what the totals are, and it's Governor Bush 28 electoral votes, Vice President Gore 3 at this very early hour in our election night coverage.
Some stunning numbers, I think. Well, maybe stunning is too strong a word, but some real surprises here, Bernie. I think that all of us are sitting back a little bit at the news that we can't call Georgia. We're not able to call Virginia. This is a state, as Jeff suggested, has gone Republican how many times? 11 out of the last 12 presidential elections?
Only Lyndon Johnson took it. And we should emphasize, this doesn't mean that we think it's going the other way. It just means right now, we don't think we can call it. But given how certain all of us were that Virginia and Georgia were going for Bush, it's a little surprising.
Well, in keeping with what Hal Bruner was talking about, and Mike McCurry saying what's going on at this hour across this country is a massive ground war. He talked about Florida. He took us up the East Coast. He talked about the Republican strength in the Panhandle and Tampa being the swing area.
Right. Well, the ground war, a lot of it is going on among African Americans who are, of course,
CNN is going to report a call in Virginia. Virginia, CNN declares, goes to Texas Governor George Bush. This is just in. 13 electoral votes in Thomas Jefferson State.
Well, that is no surprise, and I think, Mary, you were prescient, a fairly, not the longest shot of the night. That a state that hadn't voted for a Democrat for president since Lyndon Johnson would probably tilt in that direction. It may well be that we just want to say that we are not being, we're being cautious enough so that we know what we're doing. But Mary and Michael, pick up this theme about turnout, okay? About the fact that this late hour, people are out there.
From CNN Center in Atlanta, coverage of Election 2000 continues. Here again, Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, Jeff Greenfield, and Bill Schneider.
It is 7:30 p.m. on the East Coast, where the polls have closed in Ohio, North Carolina, and West Virginia. And to show you the extent of the ground war between these two gentlemen, we are not able to call Ohio yet in the presidential race for the White House. Too close to call in Ohio. Too close to call in the Tar Heel state of North Carolina, with its 14 electoral votes up. And too close to call in West Virginia, with its 5 electoral votes.
And as we look at the electoral map, we are obviously putting none of these states in anybody's column, but we should note once again that in any puzzle that adds up to the White House for George W. Bush, Ohio and North Carolina have to be in that puzzle. West Virginia, which is a predominantly Democratic state, is one of those states that the Republicans thought they could take away from the Democrats.
Wherever you see yellow, that's a uh-oh. We can't tell you anything about that state, Judy.
Ohio is a state, as we know, that has never, no Republican has ever won the White House without Ohio. We can say the same thing about Illinois, which we'll be talking about in the next hour or so. Two states, at least symbolically important for George W. Bush. Just because we cannot call Ohio right now doesn't mean it's not going to end up in his corner. A big call to make. CNN announces that we call Florida in the Al Gore column. This is a state both campaigns desperately wanted to win. The state of Florida fought over very hard the state with a Republican governor named Bush, the brother of the Republican nominee, Jeff Greenfield. This is something that is not making the Bush campaign happy tonight.
This is a roadblock the size of a boulder to George W. Bush's path to the White House. They had counted these 25 electoral votes from the moment George Bush entered the campaign before he was even nominated. Democrats have a very tough time in Florida, whether it was Social Security, the turnout, Joe Lieberman. Now, George W. Bush has to look to Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and those smaller states really become critical.
There's a disagreement we've been hearing, at least what we're hearing out of the Bush campaign, and we can ask Candy Crowley and others about this later. There were those, Karl Rove, who's been the chief strategist for Al Gore, for George Bush, said the other day, Candy, are you available? We want to ask, I'll ask you this question. Karl Rove was...
CNN Center in Atlanta. Coverage of Election 2000 continues. Here again, Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, Jeff Greenfield, and Bill Schneider.
It is 8 o'clock on the East Coast, 16 states, the polls have closed, the District of Columbia, and we have an important call to make in the state of Michigan. But we're showing you Texas. No surprise there, George Bush wins. The stunner at this hour is that we can call Al Gore the winner in the Wolverine state.
This is the state where Reagan Democrats were born, working-class people who went Republican on values issues and then on the economy and then on strength. Clinton got them back in 92 and 96. A bitterly contested state. Al Gore takes it, and the map for George Bush gets even tougher.
In the state of Pennsylvania, the Keystone State, too close to call at this hour, still being battled out by the Vice President and Governor Bush.
Another one, this one Bush, it looks like is going to have to win to build his margin.
In Illinois, Missouri, too close to call. This one and we're skipping ahead to Illinois. Al Gore, the winner there.
These Midwest battleground states, which George Bush's campaign thought they were going to be very competitive in, they haven't won one yet. And with Michigan and Illinois and Pennsylvania too close to call, but you add Michigan and Illinois to Florida, and Al Gore's people must be feeling very good about now.
And again, in the state of Missouri, it's 11 electoral votes still being fought out. This is a state where the governor running for the Senate, Mel Carnahan, killed tragically in a plane crash. Through this whole election in this state, really upside down for some time.
And again, this is one of those states we always point to because except for 1956, it has gone with the winner in every election since 1900.
In New Jersey, CNN able to say that Al Gore is the winner. George Bush was in there campaigning this very weekend. But it appears that Al Gore has won New Jersey in its 15 electoral votes. Massachusetts, no surprise, a state the Democrats can count on in just about every election you can think of, Al Gore winning and taking its 12 electoral votes. The state of Tennessee, it's Al Gore's home state, but he is not able to count on it. Jeff Greenfield, it's too close to call.
But again, in the Bush calculation, when they told us, well, we can win without Florida, a state like Tennessee was one of the states they had in mind. He went there, kind of drew a line in the sand, said Al Gore may win Washington, D.C., but he's not winning Tennessee. We can't say one way or the other, but if this one doesn't fall for Bush, it's trouble.
Maryland, the free state, reliably Democratic, and Al Gore wins that, takes its 10 electoral votes. Alabama, a state I guess we thought George Bush we'd be able to say at this hour, another one too close to call. Connecticut, Al Gore, the winner. In the Constitution state, and its 8 electoral votes. Oklahoma, its 8 electoral votes go to Texas Governor George W. Bush, the governor of the neighboring state of Texas. Mississippi, another win for the Texas governor, and its 7 electoral votes. Kansas, Bob Dole's home state, we just heard from him, solidly in George Bush's corner, and its 6 electoral votes. Up in the far northeastern corner of the United States, Maine, its 4 electoral votes still up for grabs, still being battled out between Gore and Bush. And finally, the nation's capital, the District of Columbia, no surprise at all, Al Gore the winner. And finally, Delaware in this 8 o'clock count, Al Gore the winner. That is a state where George Bush had been making threatening noises, but it looks like Al Gore has called it. Here is how, and we want to add that we are able at this hour to say the state of North Carolina is in George Bush's corner. This is a poll that closed about half an hour ago in North Carolina, and its 14 electoral votes go to George Bush. Looking at the map, the national map at this hour, you need 270 to win to become president. At this hour, it couldn't be any closer. I guess it could be by 2 votes, but Bush has 121, Al Gore at 119. It is a cliffhanger, gentlemen.
Very much so. Just a quick observation. Before that observation, exit polling from you, Bill Schneider?
Well, we do. We have some.
Maine, Pennsylvania, and Tennessee. And I'm just told that I've just been made a liar. We are able to call the state of Alabama for Texas Governor George W. Bush. Governor Bush takes the 9 electoral votes in the state of Alabama, also known as the Heart of Dixie.
Also, CNN has called that Mr. Corzine in the primary alone spent $30 million, and here in the general, another $31 million. So, my, what an expensive seat.
Well, speaking of states that we are not able to call, I'm going to wait 13 seconds until I can say this. In the state of Arkansas, where the polls are closing literally as I speak, the home state of President Bill Clinton, we are not able to call. The polls close in Arkansas at 8:30 Eastern Time, and as of this hour, this moment, we are not able to call the result. The land of opportunity. And looking once again, a quick check of the electoral map. George W. Bush racking up 130 electoral votes. His states are in red. Al Gore, the vice president, 119 electoral votes. His states are in blue. And as Bill Schneider just very carefully pointed out, the state's in yellow. And we are able to call Pennsylvania for Vice President Al Gore. 23 electoral votes go to the vice president. Jeff Greenfield, Bernie Shaw, this is a major disappointment for George W. Bush, and Jeff makes it all the harder for him to put together a winning combination.
It absolutely does. It means that of the states that are now undecided, we can begin to say that George Bush has...
Wisconsin and New Mexico.
From CNN Center in Atlanta, coverage of Election 2000 continues. Here again, Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, Jeff Greenfield, and Bill Schneider.
And indeed, those polls have closed, and the First Lady of the United States of America will become a senator from New York State. Hillary Rodham Clinton tonight defeating Congressman Rick Lazio.
I think it is safe to say, folks, that we have written a new page in American political history. Not only the first Lady ever to hold public office, someone who moved to New York, a state she had never lived in, someone who in February of 1999 or January watched her husband being acquitted of impeachment charges, and on that very day huddled with Harold Ickes, one of the Clintons' top aides, and started talking about her future, which included, amazingly to some people, a United States Senate seat in New York. One other thing, she got 2 huge breaks. That Rudy Giuliani had to, because of health and personal reasons, not run, and she got a huge break when George Bush became the Republican nominee, taking New York virtually out of the presidential battleground and dumping no Republican help in there. But to her credit, she went upstate, Republican territory, worked for a year and a half, and she is now the United States Senator-elect from New York, and who'd have thunk it a year and a half ago.
Who'd have thunk it?
Staying here in the Empire State, CNN declares the winner, Vice President Gore, picking up New York's 33 electoral votes. Continuing with our poll closings now, Wisconsin, we're not prepared to call this yet. Wisconsin's 11 electoral votes, very, very important this night. In Minnesota, Also, the same case here, we are not prepared to call Minnesota. When we can, of course, we will. Louisiana, Governor Bush winning tonight there. 9 electoral votes going into his column. In Arizona, again, we're not prepared to call this one, nor are we prepared to call it in Colorado. Colorado with 8 electoral votes hanging out there. Governor Bush, CNN declares the winner in Nebraska. 5 more electoral votes for the Texas governor. We are not going to call New Mexico yet. We'll come back to New Mexico. Rhode Island put in the Gore column, the vice president winning 4 more electoral votes. In North Dakota, Governor Bush wins those 3 electoral votes. As he does in South Dakota, 3 more electoral votes. As he does in Wyoming, still 3 more electoral votes. Now, this is the map as we look at it at this hour. The vice president, 192 electoral votes. Governor Bush, 153.
Bernie, it looks like 11 states we are not able to call yet, but as you point out, the total, Al Gore inching ever closer to 270, but George Bush still within striking distance. But the big story tonight, in addition to watching how these states tally up, is how many of them are being fought out, you know, whatever term you want to use, whether it's a cliche, hand-to-hand combat or whatever, they're still fighting it out on the ground.
It also looks, when you look at that electoral map and you look at that looming West Coast that's been so kind to the Democrats for the last 8 years, that George W. Bush is going to have to win almost everything that is still in play to have a chance because of what may be looming in California. I also think we should probably pause and talk one more second about that Hillary Clinton Senate race, because it is not just another Senate race. I have a very quick story. When Eleanor Roosevelt was a widow, Harold Ickes Sr. went to her in 1945 and urged her to run for the United States Senate from New York. Said, you'll be a great tribute to your husband. Eleanor said, I can't do it. He's only been dead a month. I'm not ready to even think about it. So 54 years later, Harold Ickes' son sits with Hillary Rodham Clinton and says, if you come to New York and run for the Senate.
Here now, a CNN major battleground call. Governor Bush is the winner in Ohio, and he grabs the Buckeye State's 21 electoral votes.
This is a state that he absolutely had to have, given what happened in Florida, Pennsylvania, and Michigan. It is also a state Republicans have to have because they just don't win the White House without it, especially with the loss in Illinois. And it now suggests that there is at least a little more optimism, not optimism, but at least hope on the Bush camp. That's right, hope. Because if you look at all the other states, before we get west, if Bush can win Tennessee, Arkansas, Missouri, Wisconsin, Minnesota, if the electoral map begins to stabilize.
It's also a state.
CNN is making another call right now. Governor Bush moving very quickly in Tennessee, embarrassing Vice President Gore by snatching his state's 11 electoral votes.
Yes.
We wish to make a correction about something that was said earlier. I believe that Woodrow Wilson got elected president without carrying his home state of New Jersey.
The second time.
Yeah, that's the second time, in 1916.
So any of you taking notes, please jot that down on your chart. But this
And there was James Polk who won the presidency without Tennessee.
Yes, but having won Tennessee, having won the vice president's home state, this scenario for Bush now begins to look at least conceivable. You can see the Bush people saying, okay, if we take Arkansas, if we take Missouri, if we take Wisconsin, if we take Minnesota and Iowa, this is what it's come down to, then we get to the West with enough electoral votes.
To you, CNN declares that Vice President Al Gore wins Minnesota, wins Minnesota's 10 electoral votes. And you were just making the point about his voting strength in various parts of the state and surprisingly having done well outside in the suburbs.
Doing well in the Minneapolis suburbs, and Ralph Nader was not as much a factor there as he was down in Wisconsin. Now let's talk about Missouri. Missouri is a crucial state. Okay, we don't have time for Missouri, we'll do it later.
Well, we always have time for the Show Me State, but we just want to talk about some of the things behind that victory in Minnesota. But here now is the very latest count. Vice President Gore still slightly ahead of Governor Bush in the electoral vote total, 192 to 185. CNN just declaring Mr. Gore the winner in Minnesota.
And if you look at this map once again and cast your eyes out west to where everybody has expected for most of this campaign to happen in California, you begin to see that the states begin to close around the hopes of George W. Bush. There are simply fewer and fewer places where he can pick up enough votes to get to 270 unless an amazing upset happens out west.
But we should keep in mind, as Candy Crowley just told us from Austin, where she's talking to the Bush people, she said they have not entirely accepted the notion, as we and some other news organizations have called it, that Florida and Pennsylvania will end up in Al Gore's camp. She said they are still looking at absentee ballots. They are not ready to concede those two states yet.
I stand by. CNN right now is moving our earlier declaration of Florida back to the too close to call column. 25 very big electoral votes in the home state of the governor's brother, Jeb Bush, are hanging in the balance. This no longer is a victory for Vice President Gore. We're moving it back into the too close to call.
One order, please. Yes.
Now could we just review this again about how?
Well, I think in the fullness of time tonight we're going to have an explanation for this, but we're reporting to you what's happening.
Well, what we're being told by our executive producer, Sid Bedingfield, is that based on the information we have from Florida, we don't entirely trust all the information that we have, and I assume the VNS service, and Bill, you can explain all this, is part of that decision.
That's right. The networks and the Associated Press collaborate in supporting a research service, really, Voter News and Surveys, which does the exit polling and also collects the data from sample precincts around the country. And they're the ones who provide us with the information that allow us to call the states. We are normally
Indian voters who had voted in Pennsylvania and other Midwestern locations.
Bernie, I'm interrupting you because it is 10 o'clock on the East Coast and polls have closed in 5 states, and we are able to call George W. Bush the winner in the state of Utah. He takes its 5 electoral votes. In the state of Idaho, another win for George W. Bush. Rack up 4 more electoral votes for the governor of the state of Texas. Nevada is one too close to call. Nevada's 4 electoral votes. We are not able to call that state one way or another. Montana, another check mark there for the governor of Texas, and it's 3 electoral votes. And the last state with polls to close at this hour, Iowa, the Hawkeye state, it's 7 electoral votes. We are not able to call it. So it just gets more exciting and more exciting. And here is the electoral map. We're going to be looking at this throughout the night. At this hour, with the polls closed in all but 5 states across the United States, we are able to give George W. Bush 197 electoral votes. His states are those in red. Vice President Al Gore, 167 electoral votes. His states in blue, and all those states in yellow, we don't have enough information yet to give them one way or another.
And let us
have a call to make in the state of New Hampshire. CNN declares that Texas Governor George W. Bush will take the 4 electoral votes. Every vote counts, folks. The 4 electoral votes in the state of New Hampshire go to the governor of Texas. So let's look at his total now. He is over the 200 mark at 201 electoral votes. Those are the states in red. Al Gore, 167, the states in blue, and an awful lot of states still in yellow that we are not able to call one way or another. But New Hampshire, a state Larry, we do have a state to call. The state of West Virginia, CNN calls, is in the corner for George W. Bush. The Texas governor takes West Virginia's 5 electoral votes. This is based not only on interviews with voters as they left the polling places, but also on our analysis of key sample precincts throughout the state. Now let's look again at the totals on the electoral map. 270 needed to win at this hour. It's 10:12 Eastern Time. We are giving George W. Bush 217 electoral votes. Those states in red, we're giving Al Gore 167. The states in blue, the ones we are not able to. If you don't mind, I'm going to interrupt because we do have a call to make. CNN says that the state of New Mexico goes into the corner of Al Gore. Vice President Gore picks up the 5 electoral votes in the state of New Mexico. That is and that adds another handful to the total we've given Al Gore. That blue state that's popped up there just to the left of Texas is New Mexico, of course, and we've now given it to Al Gore. So the total for George W. Bush, 217, for Al Gore, 172. Senator electoral votes is the state of Maine. The way it works in Maine, only one other state works this way, and that's Nebraska. The electoral votes are awarded not winner take all by the whole state, but awarded by congressional district. So the person who gets the most votes in the state gets two for the state, right, plus gets the one that they have a majority in.
Right, and that's right. And so what we don't know yet is the other congressional district is in the balance. And the way this election is going, Judy, that one electoral vote can loom very
important. And some of these states that we're talking about here, some of the ones that we just, Arkansas.
He should have been the candidate for Senate this time around.
Rick Lazio conceding in New York to Hillary Rodham Clinton. It is 11 o'clock on the East Coast in the United States, and CNN is prepared to make the following calls with the polls closing. Most of them. Al Gore has won California's big prize, 54 electoral votes. Farther west in Hawaii, 4 electoral votes going to the vice president. The situation in Oregon, it is too close to call. We cannot call that race yet, nor can we call the one in Washington State, with its 11 electoral votes. Looking to the moment at our electoral map, the vice president, by winning California, goes up over Governor Bush. Mr. Gore, 230 electoral votes. Mr. Bush, 217 electoral votes.
California, that is a state in which George Bush made a run and spent millions of dollars late in the campaign. It raised a few eyebrows. Some thought it was because they had a chance to carry it. Others said it was payback because the California Republicans were among the first group that went 2 years ago to Austin and asked Governor Bush to run and asked him to pledge that if he did run, he would not desert California the way his father and Senator Dole did. Now, in Oregon and Washington, there are 2 states where the Nader factor may or may not come into effect. And once again, we take 2 second-tier states, put them in the undecided column. With everything but Alaska reporting, you can see that the fate of the White House is in the hands of about 8 or 9 states that we cannot yet call.
All right, we are going to move all the way from the west coast of the United States.
Call. Colorado has been won by Governor Bush. Governor Bush taking Colorado's 8 electoral votes. Please continue.
So let's see, the total then is 225 George W. Bush to 231. Who said this wasn't going to be a close night, a close election?
Yeah,
it is a close election.
Colorado is the state that switched from Clinton in 1992 to Dole in 1996. So it could have gone either way, and it looks like it stuck with the Republicans as it did with Bob Dole.
And those people who were saying a week ago you would be waiting for Wisconsin, waiting for Iowa, waiting for Florida, waiting for Arkansas, Nevada, Washington, Oregon, Arizona.
And
we're right.
And we have to keep looking, I think, at the Nader numbers. You know, Colorado is not one of the states that Nader was presumed to be a threat in, but those states that are still in yellow, Arizona, Oregon, Washington.
A race in Nevada, Governor Bush wins 4 more electoral votes. He picks up Nevada's 4 electoral votes. And this is the tally as it stands now. Can it get any closer? Vice President Gore with 230 electoral votes. Governor Bush with 229 electoral votes. Trent, let me interrupt our conversation. Arizona now, CNN declares, goes to Governor Bush. Arizona's 8 electoral votes in the governor's column.
And that is a significant win because Arizona had voted Republican in every election from 1948 for since Harry Truman. It voted for Harry Truman, then it voted Republican in every election after that until it voted for Bill Clinton in 1996.
From CNN Center in Atlanta, coverage of Election 2000 continues. Here again, Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, Jeff Greenfield, and Bill Schneider.
12 o'clock on the east coast of the United States, and we are able to make a call in the last state to close its polls tonight. Alaska, the land of the midnight sun, goes to George W. Bush. It's 3 electoral votes. No real surprise at all here. This state has only voted for a Democratic candidate once since it became a state in the year 1959. So here's the total. George W. Bush, 240 electoral votes. His are the red states on that map. They are from east almost all the way to the west. Al Gore, 231 electoral votes. The states in blue, counting California, and going all the way over to the state of Maine. It is a close
Look at this. Just
election.
6 states left. One of those will put somebody over.
This is going to be a very painful night for the person who loses. We are calling the state of Washington for Al Gore, and it's 11 electoral votes. We just heard John King say the Gore campaign expected to win the state of Washington, and we are at CNN now able to give those electoral votes to the vice president based on our examination of exit polling and the key precincts. Now here's the total. George W. Bush, 246. Al Gore, 242. You just heard John King say the Gore people now believe that there is no mathematically, statistically possible way that Al Gore can get to 270 without the state of Florida, unless one of the states that have already been called for George W. Bush is taken back.
If Al Gore were to win Oregon, Wisconsin, and Iowa, and Florida went to Bush, Bush would win the White House 271 to 267. You think it can be closer than that?
Why don't we go to Hal Bruno and find out? Take us into the voting.
In Florida.
In Florida.
In Florida, especially in Florida. Well, we can go to Hal.
Just to talk about
We're coming to you now, Hal. Okay. Take us into the voting and tell us what is going on in this Sunshine State. Because we're making a call in Iowa, in the Hawkeye State. CNN declares that Al Gore has won Iowa's 7 electoral votes. When we last reported, this was how the electoral map looked, but now if you add Iowa's 7, Mr. Gore now has gone back on top. The vice president with 249 electoral votes to Governor Bush's 246.
And we can now say with absolute certainty, I believe, that unless one of these states that we've called changes, whoever wins Florida will be the next president of the United States.
That's right.
And the state's still out. George Bush, governor of Texas, will become the 43rd president of the United States at 18 minutes past 2 o'clock Eastern Time. CNN declares that George Walker Bush has won Florida's 25 electoral votes, and this should put him over the top.
That's right, Bernie. With Florida, he gets 271 electoral votes, one more than he needs. What happens in Oregon and Wisconsin now becomes irrelevant unless by some remarkable miracle some state changes course. This was the closest election electorally, it looks like, in this, perhaps in this century. Yeah. But George Bush has been declared by CNN the next president of the United States.
And if Al Gore takes Wisconsin and Oregon, he will win by 1 electoral vote. That's only happened once that I know of, and that was 1876.
George Walker Bush, the second son of a president to be elected president in his own right, coming after John Quincy Adams, who ran, almost 200 years ago.
And one person in the Bush family who's taken this hardest, this cliffhanger atmosphere, has been George Herbert Walker Bush. Yes. He has been just so uptight these past couple weeks, and these past few days, the last few hours.
You could see it earlier tonight, you know, when we went up to the hotel suite, and he was sitting there, Governor Bush was sitting there with his wife and with his mother Barbara and his father, the president. The President George Bush looked very worried at that moment.
I think anybody who's a parent knows that you suffer.
The map, but Bernie, go ahead, you were going to make a point.
No, let's look at the map, and you go ahead and report that, but I have to wonder, if Gore is not going to talk, then obviously the governor from Texas.
Or maybe we'll be hearing from Candy Crowley momentarily. Let's just point out that Florida has gone from too close to call to Gore, to too close to call to Bush, to too close to call. I suppose Nader can have some hopes that he might carry Florida in about a day or two. But this is truly amazing.
And that's, as Campaign Chairman William Daley indicated, with 99.9% of the votes counted.
That's right.
This is the electoral map, as we said. The state of Florida, which originally we had put into the Gore column, and it was back to too close to call. Then it went into the Bush column. Now it is once again too close to call, and this is the corrected electoral vote total at this hour, 4:11 a.m., November the 8th, the year 2000. Al Gore, 249, George W. Bush, 246. All this because the state of Florida will undergo an automatic, they've announced they will conduct an automatic recount because the vote in that state was under half of 1% difference.
And CNN believes there will not be a winner determined in Florida until later today, Wednesday, when there will be an automatic recount.
And I'll tell you one thing that's going to be recounted, and that is the way we count votes, because I have a hunch that there's going to be an enormous amount of scrutiny about a system that calls a state for both candidates and then at 3 o'clock in the morning winds up for neither.
I want to clarify something. If I left the impression that we know there will be a recount, let me amend that to say it appears that there will be a recount in the state of Florida. And I think it's also important to say the gentleman we talked to from the election division in the state of Florida said they still need to wait for, what is it, overseas ballots, absentee ballots, and he said that is a 10-day process.
I think I left the impression that there would be a definite recount.
Well, what we know in Florida
Keyword is appears.
Bill Daley told us as much. What he said is, and what Mr. Cass said was, when the vote comes in, and it's 1/2 of 1%, which it is way less than that, there is an automatic recount triggered. So I think the original impression you left was almost certainly correct in the first place, Judy.
Unless one of the candidates says they don't want it, and believe me, they both, I'm sure one of the candidates will want it.
Candy Crowley, we just heard Inside Politics. At 5 p.m. Eastern, we'll have updates on the very latest, and of course, for every successive hour from this point on, CNN will be your network to find out what is the latest on that presidential race.
That's right.
In the United States.
So stay with CNN because whatever is happening, we are going to be bringing it to you.
And folks, in the year 2004, please, could you make up your minds a little more conclusively? Because I think we can't take another election like this one.
No.
It's been great.
All right, thank you.
Well, for Bill Schneider, Judy Woodruff, Jeff Greenfield, Bernard Shaw, so long. It's been a pleasure.
And to all of our hardworking colleagues at CNN, thanks to all of you as well.
Hear, hear.